Hi everyone. In this video, I want to talk about another modern problem related to health that people have not realized is part of the health narrative in India or even globally, possibly because this is something that I feel can be something that can be impacting global health as well, or actually whatever I have been presenting here based on my experiences from US and India. I feel is relevant globally too, because US is also connected to many other parts of it is connected to Mexico, which is similar to Central America. So anything that occurs in US, in the border areas of US, in the lower border areas of US, is also relevant for people who live in Central American region as well, or South America as well. Similarly, anything that happens in the northern regions of USA is also relevant for people who live closer to the northern regions and closer in to Canada or even Russia or any other colder parts of the world will also have similar relevant factors influencing their health. And similarly, India also has a biodiverse climate zone, because of which we have colder areas in our Himalayan regions as well as warmer areas in the tropical parts of India. So, in the Himalayan regions, I haven't been to North India, but to Jammu and Kashmir. But I read newspaper articles recently online where it talked about the fact that there were 17 deaths that happened in a particular place of Jammu and Kashmir, wherein the doctors found that it is possible that some of the deaths could have happened due to pesticide poisoning, because some of the other patients who were showing some similar symptoms as the patients who had died, when those patients were treated with atropine, those patients seem to have got some recovery in their symptoms. So, as a result, they have now, the newspaper article didn't conclusively say that only pesticides related pollution or organophosphate pesticide related pollution was the cause of their health distress. But because some tests have proved, and the medication given for organophosphate pesticide poisoning related medication that was administered to these patients, since it helped in stemming some of their symptoms, it is something that the researchers and well, it said that they are talking to medical providers about it. But people need to understand that for pesticide poisoning related things, they need to talk to poison control center, either poison control centers in India they need to talk about, or they need to talk about with people with the relevant toxicological knowledge about it, which can also come from people who do not simply have medical degrees, but people who have actually done research or real work related to toxicological or poisoning related things. And the reason why I'm posting my videos is because I do have those knowledge. I do not have a doctoral degree, so but I went through two doctoral programs related to toxicological knowledge's development, and as a result of which I have some partial doctoral degree knowledge, as well as my own bachelor's degree gave me the right insights. All my degrees combined in pharmacy has given me the insights necessary to make the videos that I'm making related to healthcare. And then most of my videos in this YouTube page are not simply about healthcare advice, but it is about advice that, as a pharmacist, some of it was very relevant and pertinent advice that, or consultation that a pharmacist who works in the community does in US. It's part of the work of a community pharmacist work repertoire to track health incidences. If there are health incidences that they can report, they're supposed to report those health incidences. They're supposed to track anything that the patient reports to them. They are also supposed to collaborate with the doctors in US to work on joint patient issues related to medication usage, medication harm, drug usages and harm. And technically our knowledge base also gives us the insight to know about poison control stuff as well. But when I was working as a pharmacist in US, I would usually just refer people to the poison control center, because at that time all the information that I'm providing in my videos, even though I had studied about them, the information hadn't clicked for me in my practice or practical life experiences, and that's why I didn't have the greater insight about them that I developed after actually facing these issues repeatedly multiple times. So with organophosphate pesticide poisoning, I actually faced organophosphate pesticide poisoning related jerking movements of my knees and hands when I was a kid as well. It's just that as a kid, I had zero knowledge about toxicology. I had never studied toxicology. So that incidence was a very latent memory for me. And only when right now I have a relaxed time of 8 years where I have not been pursuing anything, work wise very stringently, and all my work related stuff has been just via online videos or online work related posts that I find enjoyable to talk about or do some research work on or speak about. So, and because of which I've been doing very casual work, but the kind of work where it is not casual at all, but to the outside world, because I'm not getting paid for that work, it will seem like a very casual work, but for me it is a meaningful work because I enjoy exploring these topics. And not only did I enjoy exploring certain topics related to healthcare while I am talking in these videos, the other aspect is I was suffering as a result of certain problems that I'm mentioning in my videos, all of which led to my not getting the right treatment from doctors when I was going through pesticide poisoning stages. But none of the doctors I met in India or in US understood that it was a pesticide poisoning stage. So as a child, when I was only like maybe 10, 12 years old, in India, we used to during vacation time, we used to go and visit our family for vacation. So when we would come back from vacation, once or twice in my home, some pesticides were sprayed inside our rooms to do normal maintenance for like cockroach related pest control. That is very prevalent in India, and it has been done by my family in Kolkata as well as by my family in Mumbai. But in Mumbai we used to have lesser amount of it, or only in my whole entire 20 years of my childhood life with my parents when my mom was alive, I remember it only been done maybe one time in our homes. But the tonic clonic, like at that time, because maybe something was going on with my health, I did get overexposed to the pesticides, though it was only possibly like when I went to Kolkata in the homes where cockroaches were there, they were doing some pest control that I visibly never saw them do. But obviously some pest control was happening, that's why the cockroach population in the home disappeared. And in my home I saw visibly someone doing the pest control. But because there was maybe 2 times exposure, once in Kolkata during a vacation time, and then after coming back in our own home, a secondary exposure happened within a span of 1 month. That's why possibly enough pesticide might have accumulated in my body, leading to this jerky movements of my knees. The jerky movements that as a child I didn't correlate to pesticide poisoning, obviously because I didn't have the information. But in adulthood, after 3-4 instances of having pesticide exposure related health incidences, that's when I correlated it. But now that the correlation has been made, do you really need a patient to be tested for, if you're a government hospital that is treating a mass scale patient, and let's say because 17 patients have died and many were hospitalized who are now getting treated with the atropine, what is more necessary to get the right treatment now to that area if a lot of people are experiencing pesticide poisoning in that area, is now to not rely on drug tests anymore, but to rely on more of the physical patient history related symptom and patient exposure related history needs to be done, which is what a PharmD student in US gets taught. When you are a doctorate of pharmacy student, you have to take part of the clinical analysis of a patient's health condition or medications that the patient should be given or not given. That analysis, when you are doing as a doctor of pharmacy student, or when you are consulting and collaborating with a doctor related to toxicological and pharmacological elements that the prescription should also explore, at that point of time you do, that's why patient history. So what is important now in this area, if already you suspect that 17 people died for pesticide poisoning, you can do, hopefully you are going to be able to do an autopsy of those patients also to see if acetylcholine was accumulating in their bloodstream. You can see about some of the enzymes that could be accumulating in the bloodstream to correlate with organophosphate pesticide poisoning. But you could do even further tox screen to see what else was influencing their health, because while many patients who were now saved or are in better health status as a result of getting atropine are showing better health status, because maybe primary reason for their health distress was pesticide poisoning. In our modern world, the thing that most of us forget is that, and which is why I'm making these videos, is that nowadays patients don't usually have just simply one thing going wrong with their health, especially when death occurs. While we usually conclude that the cause of death is XYZ or this one element, that of these 17 patients, one could have died of breathing distress, one could have died of heart attack, one could have died of some cerebral related problem. So different patients out of these 17 who died could have been given or certified as medically dead because of one or the other reason. But if the deeper reason for their heart attack was that they were accumulating a lot of pesticides because the water in that area is contaminated with pesticides, that could be one issue, which is what the newspaper article is exploring, that they are going to do some water analysis of the area. But I would also suggest them to do not just water analysis, but do a food analysis as well. I've not been to Jammu and Kashmir, but I've been to Sikkim in the last few years, and in West Bengal area also I have found this to be a problem. In West Bengal and Sikkim both, I found, and also recently in Mumbai, while few years back this was a problem in West Bengal and Sikkim. In recent years or recent months, I've found this to be a problem in Mumbai as well, that our water supply, that bottled water supply that I'm getting from a bottle manufacturing plant, in bottled water I have found in Mumbai contaminations of parasites in it. Parasites, which how did I realize parasites were there? Firstly, I have a strong sense of smell, so I found a little bit of a smell also. Initially when I gulped the water, I didn't feel it, but after a little bit of drinking of that water, I felt that I felt the parasitic smell in it. Secondly, I also, when you have a parasitic infection and it is a parasite which was doing something in your body where it was the parasite which generates poop. So for me, I also got excess diarrhea like symptom, but I didn't reach the diarrhea symptom. Why? Because if you have like a bottle of water, 1 liter bottle, and you've drunk only one sip of it, you may only get a little bit of minor diarrhea or softer stools, or you might go to the bathroom 2 times, which you will not consider as a great problem. But you can still distinguish if you have a parasitic infection or some bacterial infection going on. It could be a combination bacteria parasite infection also that was likely, because the way the poop smelled, it had some bacterial smell to it as well. So the smell of the poop also can pathologically, in pathology, if you are a good pathologist or a pharmacy student who knows good pathology, both, or a medical student who does good pathological work, they all have the capacity now to understand, even from the smell of the stools samples that a patient supplies, to understand what kind of infection was going on. Without even doing, the smell itself can be an indicator of something, and then when you do a microscopic analysis, you can find the deeper information related to whether it's a bacteria or a parasite which is causing this diarrhea like symptom. And I got only pre-diarrhea like symptom, you can say, simply because I practiced preventative care and I didn't drink that water. But that same water I actually used, I wanted to test it out, and since I felt it had worms in it, I tried to test it. I was also doing like some home gardening related things where I wanted to create some what is it called, use vegetable waste and food waste to make soil at home. So I was doing the soil related experiments a little bit at home to create more soil in home. So in one of the places where I did this, it was so bad after 1 week or 2 weeks of doing it, that soil was also smelling very poop like, meaning it does have some bacteria and parasite that if our stomach also has that, our poop will smell like that. And if the water had it, and while the worms were converting the soil into, all the food waste was getting converted into soil, it was also getting converted into a sewage like waste, and it was very toxic waste. So this thing that I found in Mumbai in recent months is something I also found in Kolkata trains when I was traveling in even the elite trains like Vande Bharat. And I mentioned it in one of my previous videos, but in Vande Bharat's water supply, there was this sewage cross-contamination related problem. And this sewage cross-contamination related problem needs to be explored not just in the train line related water, because certain train lines had sewage cross-contamination, certain other parts of India's train line water supplies have pesticide contamination. And there could be certain other places that could have an amalgamation of both pesticide and sewage related bacterial contamination in the water. So that's why it's very important to test your water supply. And secondly, in the when I went to Sikkim and stayed in a hotel for a few weeks, at that time in that area, again there was sewage cross contamination happening with their water. So and while I initially thought that the hotel was doing their own cooking, later on I realized that they were going and buying food from some outside street vendors or outside local vendors or smaller restaurants to get the food that I was ordering in the hotel as part of the staying thing. So the food that they were getting, because the food was not consistent, one day it was looking different, another day it looked different, one day it tasted very hygienic, another day it wasn't hygienic. So because the consistency was not there, either this lack of consistency, if it is the same restaurant giving you a lack of consistency, then it is like the practices of the cooks in the hotel that are doing this difference in cooking. Whereas if it's cooking is not happening in the premises at all, and it is happening outside of, and you're buying it from different stores, again you will get difference in consistency based on what kind of hygiene practices are being followed while cooking. And the reason why this parasitic problem or sewage problem or water pollution problem is a factor that people living in Himalayan regions haven't considered in the past is because Jammu and Kashmir, I am assuming this area where this happened is somewhere near the Himalayas. Because to me, Jammu and Kashmir means Himalayas. So it means somewhere a mountainous area is where this possibly happened. It is possible it may not be a mountainous part of Jammu and Kashmir that this happened. I will have to really look at the geographical map of Jammu and Kashmir to know about this. But many parts of Sikkim also has like mountainous regions also, and some plateau areas as well. So those areas which were completely up in the mountains, in those areas, what I have realized about the people living in those areas is that earlier when we had a very clean earth at that time, and this is true of even not only about the mountainous regions of India, this is also true about when there was less densely populated earth in any developed country as well. At that time we have all been very used to having mountain water, stream water, direct water from the rivers without having any health consequences as a result of consuming direct spring water from the mountains. In fact, If you have lived in US, you might have known this. In US, I used to work in retail, and our store used to have distilled water of 1 gallon, mountain water, spring water of 1 gallon, pure water of 1 gallon. At that time, I didn't used to understand why do you need all these three different kinds of water. But those three different kinds of water existed because the distilled water was getting manufactured in a distillery where pure water will be generated, but via distillation versus functions. Whereas the pure water was possibly getting generated by a place where some RO, ultrafiltration, and UV systems might be filtering that pure water. And then the mountain water is just simply some company which is collecting pure spring water from Himalayan like regions of any country, right? And technically, if we had a very clean earth, mountain water has to be the purest water, because in the mountains water, whatever falls as snow from during snowfall season, and then when that ice melts, that ice and snow, when it melts, that leads to the springs water source. And that water source is technically, if no humanity is living there, or the kind of humanity who lives around there has a very clean health, fit health, then you will have pure water sources there. But the problem is, right now our human existence is at a level where we don't lead clean lives, we don't eat clean food, we don't understand what is clean food, clean health, clean life at a very deeper soul level, at a very deeper understanding level of it is not there in many of us. Because we led lives, you become a little bit less aware about what are the key factors of health when we are leading little bit of a less mindful life, or when we are not having parents who could teach us the right values and things in our life, that knowledge didn't get passed on from our ancestors to us. That's why also we don't have the right knowledge. It's also because if we lead a very busy city life, many of the people in cities don't understand these concepts. I was also naive like that. I didn't used to understand these concepts when I was healthy, when I was a normal healthy person, just having this concept and idea that if I am sick, I take a medicine and I'll be healthy. That was my concept also as a pharmacist, and for many years I practiced also like that, as that pharmacist who treated patients or who sold medications to patients who were coming for a illness that they have. But while doing my pharmacy practice only as a pharmacist in US, I slowly also started evolving as a pharmacist, and I started understanding that better healthcare happens not simply when we take a medicine, but when we also understand what are the basic principles of health. And that is what, when I talk about a diabetes patient, managing it with their diet and exercise. If you are pre-diabetic patient, you can manage it with some right diet and exercise related changes. Similarly, many other diseases can also be preventatively treated when you are at the borderline stages of the disease by doing the right preventative care. So what is the right preventative care? I mentioned in one of my videos that my brother, he was not careful with the water of that area. He didn't distinguish that the water is having some sewage problems or parasite or bacterial contamination problems. So he drank whatever soup they gave. He assumed that it is a soup, so it should be very hygienically made. But if you made soup and you boiled the soup, but the soup source was some sewage cross contamination has happened to the water that has been used to make your soup will be contaminated. Same way, sewage is also used sometimes for doing organic farming practices in some parts of India. This was something that was being done in my in the colony. It was a government colony where I grew up in, and at that time I didn't know that sewage could be a problem when you are using sewage water for watering plants. But it is fine if you're using possibly sewage water to garden, to maintain a garden. At that time, maybe it might be okay-ish. When the bacterial contamination or parasitic contamination in your water is not really high, it is very negligible percentage. At that time, if you're using it to and which is what I was trying to make soil, right? In order to make soil, I possibly use only about 30 ounce 40 ounce of water. But even then, this was contaminated parasite or bacteria or both filled water in a bottled water I had used. But even though I used only about 30-40 ounces of water, that was enough to create a lot of poopy smell and a lot of excess bacterial spread in that place where I was making my soil. Same way, if sewage water is used and that sewage water also has similar bacterial contamination in it, parasitic contamination in it, then what is going to happen is your garden now is going to be cross contaminated with the sewage elements. And then if in that garden, if you were simply raising grass, it might still be okay for you. But if in that garden you are wanting to do yoga in that garden, or you're wanting to walk, and because it's a good grounding practice, good balancing health practice to walk around in barefoot in the grass. So if you want to have a good health and you want to walk around barefoot in the grass or do yoga practices in the grass, or kids want to play and while playing they fall down and get injured in that grass, at a time, do we want a very bacterially infested ground or parasitically infested ground, or do we want a healthy natural soil there? We want clean soil, right? So if clean soil is not there, you will not go towards, even for yoga you need clean soil, clean earth. Even for playing simple pleasures of life like children playing in a garden, you need clean soil, because if the soil has now any contamination with sewage water and a child while running falls down, that sewage waters, whatever elements was there in the sewage water, if not filtered out, if now growing in a rapid number because of some reason or other, that same bacteria and parasite will now infect the child's injuries. If the child gets a minor skin scrap where nothing penetrates their skin, they might be okay, they might recover. If the child is very healthy, then also even if slight injury happened, they might recover. But if the child is not healthy, if the child has some weakness in their health, if the child has some nutritional deficiencies or other challenges going on, or if the cut was deeper or they broke their bones, now what will happen if the bones got broken or a deeper gash was there? You're going to the doctor to now get treatment for it, but the doctor doesn't know that sewage water has been used in the garden where you were playing. So doctor has no clue that some antibiotic might need to be given, antiparasitic might need to be given, because you don't know what else was impacting the patient's health. And that's why patient history is becoming important, and not just patient history, but your local areas practices, normal lifestyle choice related practices are also becoming equally important. Because what at a earth and also understand, when I was growing up in that government colony, and when they were spraying the sewage water in our plants, at that time they were filtering it really well. They were filtering it in such a way, I very rarely found any toxic smell, but sometimes I did find toxic smell like pee smell or something, which was very strange and awful. But again, if you're doing a sewage, also using a sewage water, and people assume that it's sewage water, they don't have to clean that water so much because they are just simply watering the plants. And that's why people out of unmindfulness thought that, and I also did that unmindful practice, right? I also thought this has a little bit of worm, it is going to only go in the soil and it will mix with the soil and make really nice fertilizer possibly. But instead of it mixing in the soil and making nice fertilizer, it made more of a sewage problem than a fertilizer. So that's when I realized that, and this is possibly the thinking that was used when sewage water is used for watering your plants. But the problem is not just at the level of just the superficial grass injury leading to some problem in a child's health, or while doing yoga you can get exposure to these microbes. But the secondary problem is that if the water of that area and the soil of that area has now heavy sewage contamination going on, it impacts the quality of fruits and vegetables also that arises from the plants that are growing there. So if you grow, you have a vegetable garden. So when the soup came in our home, I assumed that it is the water contamination problem that led to the soup being very bacterially smelling or parasitically smelling. It was like the poop like smell was there, sewage smell was there. So that sewage smell can stem from bacteria, can stem from a combination of bacteria and parasite. So that sewage like smell was there, but while I assumed it's from the water, it is also possible that water plus food, if the food was being raised using sewage water or some cross contamination of sewage pipelines have started happening, that can also lead to now bacterial infestation. And it's such a gross topic, but this is a topic you have to explore and you have to work through this grossness in the world, because understand that with poop there is a even worse thing that is happening, that if I drink water filled with some sewage bacteria or parasite, or cook food with some bacterial or parasitic contamination, and even if I boil the food, let's say some resistance is happening, and so because of which the complete parasite is not dying or the complete bacteria is not dying, whatever it is, it's a gross thing if you eat and consume such a food. And after consuming it, what is going to happen is you continue the cycle of that poop related problem, now escalating again and again. And how much ever you take medications, what does medication do? Medication, if it is if you detect it is an anti-parasitic, it is a parasite that is a problem, you can take anti-parasitic drugs. But how long can you take anti-parasitic drugs? After a while of consuming a lot of anti-parasitic drugs can lead to anti-parasite drug related resistance as well. And another problem is, if anti-parasite resistant now has developed, like how antibacterial resistance has developed, that becomes a problem. So everywhere, if we want to truly minimize a health issue related to a microbe or a bacteria, any other bacteria or any other smaller microorganism or any other parasite, the real solution, when it is a microscopic, manageable, small scale, only 10% or 1% of the percentage of population is impacted by something level, at that time if you give medicine to the patient, that is the right cure. But my recent understanding is developing that when it has become a mass scale problem, at that time real mass scale solutions have to be done. And understanding of how these problems are cropping up, why is a sewage problem cropping up, why is bacterial resistance cropping up, all these at a deeper level you have to ask and understand. And the resistance level is cropping up because overuse of antiparasitic drugs could be happening, overuse of antibiotics could be happening, and that's why when overuse happens, then also this develops. And when lack of understanding of proper hygiene related hygiene supportive conditions happen, this also crops up. The problem which I understood from Sikkim was that Sikkim earlier, I had also gone to that area when I was a child, and I believe that, or if you watch the movies from Sikkim as from childhood days, you will see it was all very people didn't used to live very close together to each other. The houses were far apart. But now, because constructions are going on, new development is going on, lots of houses are really close together or close by. And then with the close by houses, the problem is it's also a hilly region where houses are being constructed. And now the people, if a construction worker from a normal land area, plateau like area or flat land area goes and starts doing construction in a hilly area, they don't know how to work with the hilly regions material. So if good construction workers are not there in your place who understands the mountains structural things in the right way, what can end up happening is you will construct houses with some fallacies. And it's not simply about the hilly area or because the soil material makes a lot of difference. Like I don't know how to explain this, but it's like this is a very intuitive guidance. Part of it is healthcare related. The healthcare aspect is this, that three things people have to understand who want to investigate what happened in Jammu and Kashmir, or who want to really solve the problems related to health and hygiene globally in India or globally in the world, where health and hygiene is now becoming a major issue, is to understand and realize some patients will not have simply one thing going wrong with their health. So these patients who have died from pesticide poisoning could have had pesticide poisoning. If their final death also said they died of cardiac arrest, doesn't mean that cardiac arrest was just a simple heart attack, but it could have been cardiac arrest influenced by pesticides accumulating in their body. It could have been respiratory illness influenced by respiratory distress caused due to pesticide exposures. So our daily use of pesticides has to go down. That is one thing. And the toxic pesticides, the chemical usage in the world has to go down. This is the second thing people have to realize, because when chemical usages are high, that is when only pests start exponentially growing more and more, because either they will develop resistance, or also those pests that could stay buried under the soil, that could live many thousands of meters underneath the soil and won't come up into the upper layers of the soil, because our lower layers of the soil are polluted with chemicals. Many of those pests and parasites like termites and all, you will see, this is also something I have observed, that old housing usually starts developing termites, and especially those old housing where a lot of chemical usages have happened. In those areas where chemical contaminations is high in that locality, there the termite problem starts cropping up sooner, because the termites or other insects, they stay underneath our earth. It's just that many of these insects, they stay underneath in the earth or inside the trees, and the insects that want to stay inside the trees can only stay inside the trees when the trees are healthy and are not pesticide laced or chemical laced or any other harmful thing laced. Similarly, the smaller insects that can stay below the soil, thousands of meters below, they come up when the soil gets really polluted. So any area where pollution increases, you will see the insect problem also exponentially increases. And the secondary thing is any area where antibiotics, antifungal drugs, antimicrobial drugs, antiparasitic drugs, all of these things usage has increased over time, because we have so used to, if we have a bacterial infection, let's take an antibiotic. If we have a yeast infection, let's take an antifungal drug. If we have a infection for parasitic infection, let's take an antiparasitic drug. That is a common paradigm that has been taught and worked as a solution for many decades of our life. So because it worked as a good solution, we continued using these drugs. But the thing is, there has also been some indiscriminate usage of these drugs in many parts of the world, where we were not as humans simply supposed to pop a pill to fix a problem. Some problems, when it is at a easily manageable level, like for me, if I know that this water is contaminated, I should not drink that water that is contaminated. If I have alternate source of water which is not contaminated, I'm supposed to drink the water that is not contaminated, and that is the better solution. It's not that I'll drink water that is contaminated, then I'll get poop, then I'll take medicine, antiparasitic drug or antibacterial drug depending on the infection I have. That is the logic that leads to harm. That is the logic, that is the problem zone of earth, that you shouldn't be indiscriminately popping up a pill in your life. What you need is, if better alternative is there for health, a alternative where you don't need to take medicine, or the medicine that you need to take will be very minimal, at that point of time you need to do the minimal medicine route, or that route where, if with preventative care you were able to flush out that toxin from your body, that's all you need. So all I needed, if I didn't drink too much of it, all I had to do was go for poop a couple of times and my stomach got cleared. I didn't even have to take a antiparasitic drug at all. Whereas my brother, he got really sick, so I'm sure he must have taken some drugs later on for his illness, unless he didn't go to a pharmacy to buy it for himself. But if anyone else was, I didn't ask him whether he took medicine or not for it, but most of my family is very medicine oriented family, so I'm presuming he might have taken a medicine for it. But again, for the anti-parasitic poop related problems also, there are two ways people usually solve. If the people don't know too deeply about the pharmacology of the drugs, sometimes just to stop the diarrhea, just to stop going to the bathroom 4-5 times, what people will be given would be anti-motility related drugs that will stop the mobility of your stomachs passing the stool. So as a result, then what is happening is, which can also now become toxic for you, because let's say there was, out of these 17 patients, there was someone who was getting real severe diarrhea, a diarrhea that could have occurred if they have organophosphate pesticide poisoning, a diarrhea which can also occur if you have pesticide poisoning plus parasitic poisoning, a diarrhea which can occur with 2-3 different kinds of problems happening with you at the same time as well. So what actually happened to the patient, you don't know, but most of the time doctors assume it might be a bacterial infection, so they might give you a drug to combat the bacteria. But if you don't have bacterial infection and if you've been given a drug for combating the bacteria, then what is happening, you are over medicating the patient and you are adding to the drug resistant potential of that area, because the more you keep giving drugs that is not necessary to be given, all you're doing is that drug is used by the body, it will not be used, it will be eventually eliminated by the body, and it will eventually end up in the land or water of that area, and drug resistance starts developing, because if a lot of that drug is accumulating in that area, all the bacteria in that area, good and bad bacteria, are dying, and as a result it's now coming up with mutations of bacteria that will not die. This is the same principle that is going around with antibacterial drugs, antifungal drugs right now, antiparasitic drugs, even antiviral drugs. And that is why people need to understand and wake up that just simply continuously creating drugs for combating something that, when at a lower scale level is a good thing, is not a good thing when that thing has now escalated into a mass scale level or a very toxic level of death creating circumstances. I hope this makes sense. So firstly, understand that appropriate drug use should be there, right? Drug prescribing should be there. Minimal drug usage should be there for a healthy earth to exist, as well as not just drug, minimal chemical usage also should be there. Those chemicals and drugs that are not aligned biologically with our body, those kind of chemicals and biologicals, when we are using, we add to a lot of misalignment with our health in the long run, the repercussions of which happens not the first day someone started taking antibacterial drugs, but after 10, 20, 30 years of taking those drugs, the repercussions of antibiotic resistance showed up. Like that only, other resistances are showing up, but people are not understanding it at a deeper level, not studying it at a deeper level. That's why the problem has got a little buried. So this is one problem, which is a problem, common global problem, that you can't overprescribe, or when someone has possibly a patient like now in these other patients who are recovering with atropine, definitely it is now something that has atropine is beneficial to them, because something is going on in their body where atropine is able to counteract that thing. So organophosphate pesticides being the main culprit might be true. But what if it is a combination of organophosphate and organochlorine pesticide? And while you have detected the organophosphate pesticides from some of the symptoms in some of the tests, what if the organochlorine levels are not yet in their body at a detectable, diagnosable level, but it's still, causing the harm to the patient? And here what therapy, that's why needs to happen, is a therapy related to asking patients better questions, understanding in your area and the farming and the food supply that you're getting, what kind of farming is going on in the homes, what kind of in the market, what kind of the market analysis information should be there with the government, especially if the government wants to minimize the cost of healthcare interventions they want to provide to the poor and provide to those who can't afford expensive drugs. For all of them, the best solution is understanding and minimizing health harm via the right ways to ensure good health will exist in that area. And the right way to ensure that good health will exist in a beautiful mountainous region is, because mountains are even more difficult to navigate than a flat earth, in mountainous regions it's even more important that you be more aligned with nature. And the problem in mountainous regions related housing now is that many of these housing I have felt have first of all, that's why only you will see during landslides and other problems, many of these houses flow down, many of the trees wash away. Why does that happen? Because if earth pollution is high, at that time the trees also can't have good roots, trees don't have access to good clean healthy soil, so tree health declines during heavy pollution on earth. When tree health declines, even if that tree was possibly a 50-year-old tree or 40-year-old tree, any place which experiences landslides, avalanches or floods in a mountainous area of the world, at that time when the trees are easily getting washed away, easily getting broken down, houses are easily sliding away, that is happening because our soil is not strong anymore. And our soil can remain strong when the trees growing on the soil are strong, when the trees have deeper roots, when we have older trees in those areas, but older and healthier trees. If they are older trees but they have all been wrecked because of pollution parameters of that area, those trees will also easily break down and fall away. And trees show the symptoms of how a tree, according to me, the way I have observed some of the plants and trees, some trees and plants start showing the distress of local pollution in many subtle ways that now botanists and other people who do farming and gardening activities, they need to awaken towards, to ensure that when the tree is not in good quality health, how to support its health, not chemically but by doing the more earth aligned, health aligned ways. The chemical way should be the last resort if nothing else is working. And this is why only the problem with medicine is that people use medicine as the first resort rather than the last resort. People don't practice, only many people don't know how to practice good hygiene. Why? Because if you were used to drinking crystal clear pure water in your childhood days, and for 30-40 years your grandparent, no one had any health problem while directly consuming the spring water, you don't know how to boil vegetables correctly, how to wash the vegetables accurately, how to ensure that you may not have the sense of smell. If you have aged now, you may not have good sense of smell to detect if bacterial or microbial contamination is there in the water. So you will drink a very toxic water, sewage contaminated water, without understanding it is contaminated, and then after drinking it you are getting unhealthy. But instead of doing that, now if you are in a family where 5 people live in the family and the baby is saying I don't want to drink this water, it is the baby is refusing to drink, you're supposed to follow the baby of the family. Why? Because the baby, if it's a 2-year-old toddler who's saying I don't want to drink this soup, mummy, or he cries every time you try to feed the soup, you have to now start bring mindfulness in your living with those family, those who are refusing to eat something, refusing to consume something. Because if it is a child is also going to have weakened immunity. If it is a elderly is also slowly developing a weakened immunity. And if it is a sick person like me, I am also developing a weakened immunity. I went to these places when I had cancer like conditions. Because I had cancer like conditions and some poisoning related issues were going on, I was having severe breathing distress, and in order to help me with my breathing distress, anything which I will inhale or anything which I will consume which will lead to further health harm, both were places where I was now having a sharper response to anything mildly toxic also, which other people might be able to process easily if they are in good health. Most people will not be able to process easily. And with the sewage related cross contamination issue is, some people might just assume that if for 30 years they have been drinking really contaminated water, they might assume that if they're going 2 or 3 times a day for poop and the poop is not very diarrhea like, they might assume that this soft stool means that this is their normal stool consistency. But whereas what could be happening is they were slowly drinking like this sewage like water for so long that they've got used to it, and they don't understand that sewage water is a problem. For some, that is one problem. For others, the problem is earlier 30 years back when they were growing up as a child, the water was pure. But right now the water is not pure. So having right filtration systems in those areas is important. And though in those areas it is not simply about, in any area of the world, it's not simply about filtration system, because even if you have a good filtration system, some of it will not sometimes get filtered out. So especially the microparticles of microbes, microparticles of any chemical medicine that might be there, or any pesticide or other contaminations that might be there in your local water, the best way to actually purify earth would be to also reduce your excess usage or mass produce usages of many of the things that we normally use, and shift to using those kind of things which are more health aligned, which are more nature aligned, which is what in European countries where density of population is less, or in US where again in certain parts of US the density of population was less, or research work related to these things were going on. It's the information related to now how parasites are impacting our health, or how some bacterial resistance is developing, microbial resistance is developing. All the information related to our health harm has been gathered already by scientists, researchers, students who practice preventative care strategies, who give advice to patients and counsel patients on preventative care strategies. Some of them have already awoken to what is needed. But the problem is the rest of the world, who is still used to the last century's paradigm of healthcare, which was just to give medicine, is not waking up that simple medicine will not help. Like if these area has water pollution related to pesticide, or pesticide plus other chemicals, or pesticide plus bacteria plus parasite in their water, they can't, even if they get atropine for temporary relief in the hospital, they can't continuously take atropine. Atropine will have side effects. Secondly, atropine only causes the symptomatic effect of pesticide poisoning to get alleviated. Real detox of a patient will happen when pesticide exposure will be gone from their life, and a pesticide exposure can't go away from their life if everyone in the locality is continuously using pesticide. So you have to start doing a slow detox of the whole community. If a large community is impacted, if hundreds of people in a village are impacted, where 17 have died, another let's say 10 were hospitalized, but there was still possibly another 70 in the village, or more than 70 in the village, who are also actually having minor levels of pesticide poisoning, just that day their health is not at a very distressing level. And can you continue giving atropine to everyone? No, you can only give atropine to those who are showing those heavy symptoms, where atropine will be needed to make sure their heart doesn't fail or their health doesn't fail. But for the others, real detoxing now needs to happen. That detoxing that needs water pollution problem related resolutions, and one of which, if water pollution is not simply due to, if it is due to pesticides, you have to slowly reduce usage of pesticides. And understand that many parts of India, this is one problem I have realized when I went to Rajasthan, is because organic farming was happening in certain parts of northern to Rajasthan, like Himachal Pradesh, Haryana, Punjab, there organic farming is going on. And because of, or even Madhya Pradesh, many of the neighboring states of Rajasthan are doing organic farming. Some parts of Rajasthan are also doing organic farming. But because of the way law is set up in our country, or because of the way people mistakenly understand when pesticide ban is happening, what happens is, if your ban has a list of 10 pesticides, most farmers, if they are not well educated, they are only following that ban of 10 pesticides. They are not looking that under the organophosphate class there could be another class of pesticides along with organophosphates that also they shouldn't be using during their farming practices. But because they're so used to using pesticides in their farming, they want to continue using them, and they just get convinced by some marketer to now convert from organophosphate to organochlorine, because they found a heavy organochlorine pesticide related problems in Rajasthan, and some organophosphate poisoning related problems in Rajasthan. And in the patient population, in the animal population, in my own health. And similarly, and these things are manifesting as symptoms in the bodies of the people living there. It's just that only when they are at the extreme distressful condition, that's when they end up going to the doctor and getting treated for it. or when they go to the doctor, if the doctor is not aware that combination things could be causing, like there could be a patient who could have pesticide poisoning from two different pesticides, but understanding their health profile is something now doctors have to mindfully start doing to treat them. And also the exposure that in the hospital, maybe if the exposure doesn't happen, they'll be fine in the hospital, but when they come back home, if the exposure related to the pesticides are not gone from their life, like if the pesticides are there in the water and it's seeped into my clothes, I have no clothes that are pesticide free. So can the poisoning go away if I don't have clean clothes without pesticides in it? Similarly, if the pesticide is there in my food and I'm continuously, all food sources are pesticide laced, then again, the pesticide poisoning related harm continues, and which is what my problem is. Like, even though I know I had pesticide poisoning a couple of years back, all symptoms of it was there. After detoxing from pesticide usage or less exposure to pesticides, some symptoms alleviated. If I could take atropine or get some adrenaline shot, again, some pesticide poisoning related problems might be solved. Like some temporary symptoms will be solved, but the real detox happens only when the pesticide leaves my body. And the pesticide can leave my body how? That is what I have been working on and exploring, how via certain natural ways, or if I do certain things, like some exercise can detox those pesticides which are water soluble pesticides. But then also with exercise also I need a good clean water source, because water is very important for many aspects of healing. You do pesticide poisoning related healing, you give treatment to a patient, like for your atropine injection also you need good clean water. And if you don't have good clean source of water anywhere, or very less places have, even like medication manufacturers now have to wake up to this water contamination problems, because if whatever you use as a protocol for ensuring medication safety in the past is not necessary that in the present, that whatever steps you took to ensure safety is still relevant in the present. People don't understand that everything needs upgrading as time passes, as other conditions surrounding that area of work that you are doing as evolving in some way, or it needs to devolve, and some parts need to devolve and some parts need to change their practice and paradigms. So there is a lot of change of practice paradigm, daily life practice to medication usage practice, and understanding of medications appropriateness practice has to change, as well as understanding of what is the least harm possible to a patient. That understanding now has to develop for those patients where the life conditions are such that, let's say you are a farmer also, and in your home life also a lot of pesticide is being used, and also you have a sewage problem in the water supply of the area where, from the river from which you're doing your farming, all of which means your food will also be contaminated, clothes might also be contaminated, your farming activities and gardening activities are possibly causing you to have overexposure. So for such a patient like that, they are in the real precarious condition where 4-5 conditions are there impacting their health, and each of them step by step needs to be detoxed. Like some patients have to have a step by step detox. It's going to be a complex detox because some of the detox steps need practice change in daily life. Many daily life practices have to change slowly. Like if you're used to spraying pesticides, it's very difficult to teach someone don't use pesticides if they're very used to. I can't convince my own family about this. There are many family who can't understand like it is real, it has got real harm, and that's why only when large scale deaths happen, those things need to be reported, and the deeper understanding of that death needs to be developed. And I'm hoping it's not simply it could be pesticides, but in some patients cases it may be pesticides plus other things, which also, if you found for some patients that pesticide poisoning related treatment helped them, doesn't mean that that is the only treatment they needed if there were other conditions. Because if parasite is impacting someone's health, what can the parasite do? If I have a parasite infection going on in my stomach, the parasite is going to eat all the food I am eating. I will also have what? I'll have nutritional deficiency, and because of nutritional deficiency, how much of a food I eat, I am only continuously generating poop, but none of the food that I am eating is going in my body to give me good nutritious health. So that also weakens my immunity. That also then eventually can result in patient's death, because how much ever you feed the patient, let's say you didn't detect only they have parasitic infection going on, you gave them all the right treatments related to pesticide poisoning, because that was also going on with them. They got the treatments for pesticide poisoning, they got IV fluids also for nutritional things if you found that the patient has nutritional deficiency. But after that, but the nutrition is not going to them because the parasite is eating it first. So then what is happening, you have to first treat the parasite infection as well as possibly simultaneously the pesticide poisoning for some patients. So that's why water analysis is necessary, their right accurate pathological analysis of their conditions are necessary, understanding where the patient lives, what kind of food the patient eats, if the patient travels, where they have traveled to. All of these are also very important factors in determining the overall health of any patient. Like if some of these patients were doing some business practices across the border, or there are tourists who came to this place for tourism purposes and they live in Mumbai, it is possible that the parasitic infection that they have has traveled from Mumbai to their area. That Himalayan region had no parasitic problem, but because a tourist now traveled to that area, the tourist travel has resulted in parasites in that area. And now that parasite, and not today's tourist who must have traveled, it is possible 6 months back some tourists traveled there, they had a parasite infection, they didn't know they had a parasite infection, no one knew, because we don't know how to diagnose and detect it properly. Because we didn't know, they pooped, they went away after travel, and they assumed that they could have had some other food poisoning. Whatever they assumed, that doesn't matter. But the when enough tourists have now traveled from different countries or different parts of the world to a tourist destination, and their poops and their local water supplies and their local medication usage, their daily medication usage, all of its metabolites also now go into the water of a hilly region. That's why only it is important that when over development is happening in hilly regions, the pristineness and natural beauty of those regions then get destroyed as well, because you are overcrowding that area. And that's why only you will see more landslides happen where overcrowding has happened, more landslides start happening, or floods and other natural disasters also will start unfolding. The more and more human activities make you nature misaligned with the human activities you are doing in that area. So this developed understanding also needs to develop before people start giving more and more developmental related permissions to people to keep redeveloping, because humans assume that if we mass produce something, do something in mass scale, or if something is generating a lot of income, let's continue generating the income continuously, let's start milking this. But that is the problem. What you start milking, when it has reached its limit of being milked, or it has reached its threshold of harm, that's when the long term like these kind of disasters and harms start unfolding. Now it is at a death of 17 people scale. I don't know how many people live in that village. Let's assume it's a village of 500 or 1000 people. But if it was a smaller size village, it is easier to understand what was going on there. Then the larger and larger the village it will be, or more and more the tourists are coming to a area to live there and for tourism purposes, more and more factors of pollution you are adding to your system. And if you don't know how to handle the factors, when 50 years back or 100 years back in Jammu and Kashmir, only the very rich used to go for tourism purposes. What used to happen is it maintained the pristineness of the area. But when over tourism happened and then war happened and then the tourists were not going there, yes, people lost their livelihood, but you could also see the pristineness of Jammu and Kashmir had returned. And now again, if you are focusing on tourism, if you don't now focus and learn from the mistakes of past tourism and now current this century's problems related to tourism, you will continue the escalating the problems related to earth pollution, which will then continue escalating the problems related to treating someone healthily. Because in a place like Jammu and Kashmir, when people go also, this is something I found very strange when I went to Sikkim with my cousins. My cousins are very used to eating a lot of crap, meaning they eat a lot of food. I have grown up in a place where I led a life in such a way where I don't over consume food. I consume when I'm really hungry, but most of the time I also consume very minimal quantities of food, not like a large numbers like my cousins eat. So in the Sikkim region, when I was there, and it was very very cold. It was month of June, but for me it was very cold because it was 40 degrees Fahrenheit type temperature at that time. So because of which some 40 to 60 was 60 was not the temperature. I think 40 to 50 was possibly the temperature Fahrenheit. So I was finding it very cold, and cold naturally causes you to actually eat less. So I was eating less only in that area. I was only preferring 2 meals, and the most people who live in that hilly area, they eat only possibly 1 or 2 meals. I will have to ask them. I never interviewed them, but I'm assuming that if you live in these hilly regions, you will see that you also don't need large amount of food, because it's a natural body's mechanism only. You don't need that much food possibly if you have clean pristine surroundings and many clean things happening there. That's why only people don't grow also. A lot of things don't grow in the hills also. The things that grow in the hilly region are actually, you can survive with just fruits and nuts and very lighter sources of meals. But people who come from cities, everyone expects, I want to eat chicken, I want to eat mutton. So they've introduced all these chicken, mutton, non-vegetarian things in the hilly regions, which also adds to the poop problem, sewage problem, and detracts from the pristineness of those areas. Whereas if you want to align your tourism or align your health towards what is actually truly you should do in hilly region, the best food I had in Sikkim was the Wai noodles or thukpa soup, all of these which have just noodles and soup and vegetables. That's all I needed. I needed either vegetables or my body was craving some fruits. That is all that you need, and good clean water, because that is what will sustain good health in hilly regions. But if you introduce the more non-hilly type foods you introduce there, and some meat you can eat, but not like it shouldn't be like a daily consumption of meat. If you rarely eat meat to have good muscles or those kind of products that will give you the protein to have good muscles, but you understand that in hills you need sure-footedness and because the oxygen levels are also different, not too much muscular power also should be there. Some right level of muscular power should be there according to me. And also but main thing is protein sources should be coming from nuts and maybe milk products rather than animal proteins or killing of animal related proteins. That helps, because the more animals you breed there and kill there, you're going to bring the same problems that other ground level people are having with flu viruses, coronaviruses and other viruses. That same ground level problem will get now translated to the hills, which is what is happening when tourism is going from ground level to touristy hilly regions or colder regions, not understanding that if we want good balanced health, colder regions need a different kind of eating habit, lesser eating, that kind of eating that is aligned with, if you're not in hills, you're not going to do the same kind of back-breaking work when you are living in the base of a mountain. So hill work is very different kind of work. Base of a mountain work is a different kind of work, and that's why only in the base of a mountain, when you are a farming land related oriented person doing a lot of back-breaking activities, then you eat a lot of food or you need to consume a lot of food. But when you're an athlete or something, like in certain areas of the world, certain percentage of population only need a lot of food, whereas majority of us in the modern world is doing something aligned with more gluttony like things, because just because we have access to a lot of food, we consume a lot of food that is needed or not needed by us, which is also where now people need to start understanding mindful eating habits. Because the moment if I found a soup to be distasteful and it is not the right content, it's going to make me sick, I should say no. And that was a very obvious soup that I said no to. But also when living in Sikkim, because of whatever other health challenges and other things I was doing, and I was doing no activity at all, I was not going on hikes or anything, I didn't need 3 meals a day. All I ate was most of the time 2 meals a day, sometimes even 1 meal a day. And sometimes rarely 3 meals a day, but only very light meals. My meals were, one meal would be omelette, another meal would be momos, another meal would be soup and a sweet dish, something like that, very softer. And if they had good clean salads, I would have eaten that, but I didn't find that place wasn't offering the kind of hilly food you should offer. Whereas that was one Sikkim visit. Another Sikkim visit, when I was not sick, at that time I was very healthy physically, or comparatively much healthier. And at that time when I went and with my cousins and all I needed was some momos, some lighter, dal chawal like thing, and that's it. I really didn't want to eat a lot of food, but my family was consistently, because they're used to eating a lot of mutton and chicken and all that, so they were wanting chicken daily in their meals. But if I had gone there by myself, I would not have consumed any of those foods that my family was asking them to consume. A little dal chawal would have been enough. A little snack like food or fruits and nuts from the hills would have been actually more healthier to consume there. So this is something people, when they are tourists, they need to understand. When you are also locals, you need to understand how to support tourism without destroying your own ecosystem and destroying your own health. Like the things, people, when we are going to the hills for tourism related purposes, we are going for partly health purposes as well. So if the right rules and regulations and understanding is built about what keeps hills safe, you understand that if you don't add to the poop in that area by eating a lot of garbage or overeating there or eating bad food there, then what will happen is the greater the preventative steps we took, the better the health will be of everyone. The people who are going to go there next, the people who are already living there, and people who have already gone in the past. For them also it will be a healthy experience if they understand what is a more health aligned practice when you are going to a different region of the world that you don't live in usually. So I hope this made sense. If anyone has questions, comments, post it here. Thank you very much. Have a great day.